G'day, I'll just wait for some people to come on. And how are we all doing? Let's fiddle with this light for a second. It's a bit annoying, but such is life. I got a little ring light. So, g'day friends and foes, this is Arjay Martin, and this is Arjay's This Is Not Legal Advice, episode 80, or TINLA for short, and this one is entitled something like, Is Peter Little Really an Australian Lawyer? So, many of you may know of Peter already. Graham Little, nay Peter Pope, is apparently his full official name, and the reason why he has two different names is that he was adopted, so he had his, the name he grew up when he was a child, and then he later found his birth name and birth mother, etc. And anyway, so I'm going to go through a little bit of legislation with this, because there have been for a number of years many people criticising Peter and claiming that he is a fake lawyer, that he is not an Australian lawyer, that, they ask questions like, which law firm do you work for? And, other questions like that. So, I'm here to settle what that actually means to be an Australian lawyer, and we'll find out if he is an Australian lawyer together. I know, of course, already, but that's beside the point. Hi, Hillary. So, maybe also some of you are new to Peter or haven't heard of him before. He did do a video 2 days ago where he went to the police headquarters in Victoria and was having a discussion with the police officer there, including with a 6-page whistleblower statement from a New South Wales police officer. From memory, that officer is from Grafton Police Station, which is basically halfway up the New South Wales coast. And he also talked about the Rainmaking Control Act of 1967. I actually introduced Peter to that act when I first met him. And disclosure, I am friends with Peter. Might speak to him once every 3 months or something like that on the phone, or for a few times every 3 months, like in a little batch, discussing various scenes. I do find him to be a genuine person and, genuinely in a pursuit of liberty and against tyrannical government, etc. He does have some issues that he talks about in his own videos, and people setting him up, unfortunately. And, I even get contacted by various people associated with the IMOP party trying to tell me that I have to stop being friends with Peter, which is ridiculous. Like, what right do people have to do that? And a lot of that stems from, I believe, that basically you have the AVN, the Australian Vaccination Risks Awareness Network, whatever it's called now. They used to have a different name, then they had to change it apparently, because it was deemed that they could have been misleading people. Maybe someone can type the proper name for them. But basically, I believe that their political wing is IMOP, which is an involuntary medical options party. And the way I see it is that it's basically like the affiliated unions. They have a political arm being the Australian Labor Party. And there's also some that are affiliated with the Greens, etc. as well, but that's another story. But anyway, so some of you may have seen that video. It has last time I checked, about 171,000 views, and it's only been up for 2 days. I do think that a lot of these people are very jealous, and the old Australianism, or whatever you're going to call it, of tall poppy syndrome does exist. So Peter did used to run multi-million dollar companies, and then for whatever reason that, some people say it's because he got divorced, I think 3 times, and there's various other explanations, but it appears that he has lost the bulk of his wealth, at least. A lot of you, again, I'm not repeating anything confidential, just things that are publicly discussed in Peter's own videos. But for instance, he owned a mansion or something like that on French Island in Victoria that used to belong to Kylie Minogue, just as another example. And I do have a video on YouTube, which I'll just show, the background to, or whatever, when I turn this camera around in a moment. Hi Lorraine and Barbara as well. So for those just joining, this is about, is Peter Little, which is his name on Facebook, really an Australian lawyer? So I'll get into it. So how do I turn this around? Should swipe up. No. There we go. There's a button there. So this is the Victorian Legal Profession Act 2004. It's Act number 99 of 2004. So that means that they've had 98 acts before that were passed in Parliament in 2004. Obviously there would have been some afterwards as well. So basically, I'll just flip this around quickly again. So basically, with definitions in law, the premium definition is a statutory definition. So if a statute says, a cat means any animal with 4 legs, then that's what it means. But then you can have judge interpretations, etc., being different type of definition where, they'll say an animal with 4 legs that purrs when you pat it. I'm just making up silly examples, but just to explain. So basically, you go from the legal definition, usually within the act itself, if it's a modern act, or a similar act. You can also have dissimilar acts, but then sometimes the interpretation must be changed. If there's no such definition, you go to a judicial act, a judicial definition, i.e. the common law definition. So a judge will say, a cat has to be, just using a silly example again, 4 legs, a tail, purrs when you pat it, and scratches you when you look cross-eyed at it. Again, I'm just being silly about it, just to explain, and there's all mosquitoes in this car, which isn't helpful. Anyway, and then if there's no judicial definition, or if it's doesn't quite fit, you go to a dictionary definition. You don't have to use a technical dictionary or a legal dictionary in a lot of cases, unless it is a particular, technical meaning. So just say if there were 2 scientists suing each other and they had to define, I don't know, I'm just making something up here, what entropy is, or something like that. So then they would go to a technical dictionary. For legal dictionaries, that's technical dictionary in a legal field, but things like the Macquarie Australian English Dictionary are used in court, and as long as it's a proper dictionary, they often do prefer non-abridged versions. And anyway, hi Cherie as well. So I'll just flip this camera around again. So I'm going to the statutory definition of Australian lawyer, what it actually means. And also, just as a background, many common law countries, i.e. ones that used to be or still are controlled by Britain, they basically traditionally have a split profession. So that is that you have lawyers but within lawyers they have two separate sections. So one is barristers, which are specialists who, argue in court. They specialise in procedure, law of evidence, etc. Despite that, all lawyers have to study that nowadays. But you also have solicitors, which are more like, the paperwork kind of people. Often people will see a solicitor with a case or a problem. They get preliminary advice, then a solicitor may engage on behalf of the client a barrister who may well give better advice, or at least represent the person in court. Potentially, it used to be the rule that you could not go directly to a barrister, but over time that has eroded, so barristers can take on clients directly now. So in Victoria, however, they have had a fused profession where it's like the USA. So instead of having barrister and solicitor, you just have what they call in America an attorney, or, it's still two different things in Victoria, but it's fused. Or at least used to be. So I'll just switch this screen around. So again, this is the Legal Profession Act. So you go to Part 1.2, Interpretation, which is 1.2.1, Definitions. So go down to Australian Lawyer. So Australian Lawyer has a meaning given in Section 1.2.2, Subsection A. And that is opposed to an Australian legal practitioner, which has the same meaning as given in section 1.2.3, subsection A. And really the difference is that an Australian legal practitioner has an Australian practicing certificate, being a current one, whereas an Australian lawyer doesn't. It includes people that don't have a current practicing certificate. So would be helpful if I could have this camera landscape mode and high mark as well. So section 1.2.2, just turn this light off because it's hard to read the screen otherwise. So for the purposes of this act, an Australian lawyer is a person who is admitted to the legal profession under this act or a corresponding law. So obviously before 2004 you had other laws where people could be admitted. You also have, and it does go through this in the definitions, but I'm sure people don't want to be here for 20 hours watching this. But you could also be, admitted to practice in Queensland, as an example, or in South Africa, or some other foreign jurisdiction. So a local lawyer is a person who is admitted to the legal profession under this act, whether or not the person is also admitted under a corresponding law. An interstate lawyer is a person who is admitted to the legal profession under a corresponding law, but not under this act. And really, they do have a separate definition for foreign lawyer as well, but that's elsewhere in the act. So this is section 1.2.3. For the purpose of this act, an Australian legal practitioner is an Australian lawyer who holds a current local practicing certificate or a current interstate practicing certificate. And then it goes on, local legal practitioner, sort of a bit repetitive really for what I said before. I'll go quickly to this website, which is Australian Centre for International Commercial Arbitration, just because it has a nice little explanation. So about the Victorian Bar, and bar does not mean British accredited registrar or registry that many people claim. That's covered in my video TINLA 13. It's a load of garbage. But the Victorian Bar is a private, voluntary, self-funded, non-profit professional association of barristers who practice in Victoria. The work of the bar is to blah blah blah, but since 1890 Victoria has had a fused or amalgamated legal profession. That is, there's been a single admission to practice as a barrister and a solicitor of the Supreme Court of Victoria. The terminology changed with the Legal Profession Act 2004, which we just saw, to admission as an Australian lawyer and licensing to practice as an Australian legal practitioner and blah blah blah. So barrister is defined now within that act as an Australian legal practitioner who engages in legal practice solely as a barrister. So as I said, you know, you can write advice, you can be in court arguing for people, that kind of thing. And then I have this is a Victorian Bar Association. It just says about, you know, barristers are lawyers with specialist skills as independent advocates and advisors. Now they have a bar readers course. I'm not sure if in the past they used to have that, because it's my understanding that you just did a law degree in Victoria and you were automatically admitted as a barrister as well as a solicitor, but maybe it's slightly different now, or maybe this is more for interstate lawyers, something like that, if they want to move to Victoria to become a barrister, because perhaps in the Victorian law courses that they automatically sit for the bar, so to speak. And then just turn the camera around again for a second and light back on. So as you can see clearly, as shown by law, Peter is a Australian lawyer. That is, if he was ever admitted to practice law, in his case in the Supreme Court of Victoria. And I have one more thing open, I believe, to show that. Also, I do have a great interview with Peter that was done in May or July 2019. I first met him in person on the 4th of April, which happened to be my birthday. When was that? 2018 maybe, 2019, I don't remember exactly. It's been a while. So I will quickly show the title screen for this video, and then also show where Peter has posted a copy of his practicing certificate, one that he held a couple of years ago. Obviously, to hold a practicing certificate, you have to be an Australian lawyer. So he has had apparently 4 different practicing certificates. Technically, you can renew it every year. It is important also to realise that someone can be doing legal practice for the government, as an example, without actually holding a practicing certificate. So, that's another story as well. But anyway, I'll quickly show this video, and I will put a link to this as well as the TINLA 13 on the British Accredited Registry or Register, depending who you listen to. And then also one other interesting thing about his practicing certificate, some claims that some of the people that don't like him make about him. So just quickly turn this around. So this is Arjay's Interesting People, episode 1. It's also TINLA number 5. Graham Little, nay Peter Pope. I just call him Pete because I keep forgetting if it's Peter Little, Graham Pope, whatever. So this was filmed at Bond University when I was doing my Juris Doctorate law degree. There's Peter in his cool shirt. It's quite an interesting interview. I do like it where people, you ask them questions and then you're not interrupting every 5 seconds. Even got man boobs in here. I need to hit the gym more, don't I? Where are my man boobs? I'll try and show a better shot. Look, woo, look at those mammaries. Which of course aren't really mammaries. But anyway, so this is an interesting thing I read today. I'll just explain it. So basically, there's a fella in Victoria named, or his nickname's Lucky Lance. I think his name was Lance Lee Simon, or Lance Simon is also known as. And he's married to a high-profile Victorian barrister named Zara Gard Wilson. None of this is confidential. He says it in his own videos. But he has a new page called Calling Out the Scammers, and it was either on that or on his own Lucky Lance page, where someone finally revealed, so there's a claim going around that Peter had failed his 2 modules to become a lawyer. One was, I'll just check this quickly. If the computer doesn't keep being annoying, jumping. So one was ethics and one was professional responsibility. So someone finally revealed why they've been making this claim, and the reason, that so-called evidence they have, because how the hell would they know, unless they work for the Victorian Legal Service Commission or something like that. But they finally revealed their evidence, and their evidence is garbage anyway. I've loaded a picture of their evidence. So this is Graham Little, nay Peter Pope. As you see, that's his actual name. It's all explained in that TINLA episode 5. A lot about his history, where he used to work for what became ASIC, which is the Australian Securities and Exchange. Buggered that up. Australian Securities and Investment Commission, which is the equivalent of the US, United States Securities and Exchange Commission, but it used to be the national blah 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 instead of Australian, so it changed scope a little bit and expanded. But as you can see here, it's got practitioner number blah blah blah. He's authorised to engage in legal practice. There were restrictions on there. As a, what does it say? So not authorised to receive trust money, and that doesn't mean that someone's been, found guilty of fraud, that another fake claim going around. In fact, if you are a fraudster, at least if it hasn't been for 20 years ago or something like that, you cannot even be a legal practitioner. And you'll get booted out of the legal service because you do have to be a fit and proper person. But some people don't do, as an example, trust accounting, and there's other reasons too. And remember too that Peter got his law degree back in the 1970s. But as you can see here, it says valid between, it is very blurry, but 16th of the 10th, 2017 and 31st of the 3rd, 2018. I think that's when he was being a lawyer for a particular famous boy who's legally not supposed to be named or whatever. As far as I know, that's still a case. But it says the holder must complete 2 additional continuing professional development units in the field of ethics and professional responsibility prior to 31 March 2018. So in other words, if he wanted to renew his practicing certificate at the expiry date, then he would have to do what's called CPD, Continuing Professional Development. So lawyers every year have to do additional courses to make sure that they are up to date. So you do have a list of different courses you can do to do that. So, someone might be interested in medical law, as an example. So they might pick that, and that does so many CPD points, as an example. But they're using that, claiming that that is evidence that he failed ethics and professional responsibility, which is just stupid, because basically what it could be, besides it might say that on everyone's practicing certificate in Victoria, maybe they're required to do CPD units in those particular fields, but what it could also be is basically Peter did his degree in 76 or something like that, and the courses change over time. So back in the 1990s, maybe about 1994, they changed law degrees in Australia to follow something called the Priestley 11. So basically there's 11 set topics that you must study and pass in order to become a lawyer. You also have additional units as well, which are electives. So some of the Priestley 11 topics are administrative law, constitutional law, contracts, torts, what else? Probably ethics and trust accounting, that kind of thing. But the standards have changed over time. So even back in the 1970s, apparently it was really rare, if they even had it at all, to do a thing called practical legal training after someone completed their legal degree. And basically that's another course that you do on top. But back then it was common for people to do articling or clerkship. So you go be a slave for someone for 2 years, i.e. on low wages and doing mundane work, so to speak, which of course teaches people to do better paperwork anyway. But nowadays hardly anyone does that, and they basically do another course on top that has practical supervised practice on top of it. And anyway, so what it could be as well, without getting an answer from Peter or whatever, I did send SMS just before I did the video, but I have not heard back about it. But what it could be is, say in New South Wales, they used to have a, what's it called? I look up the proper name. But basically you could go to TAFE and do a course called a TAA. And I'll just write TAFE. And basically that is a course to allow you to be a teacher. So it's training and assessment, a certificate 4 in it. But then they changed it to TAE because they changed the standards. But then they told the people that have a TAA, maybe I'm doing it backwards, but you get the idea, that they had to do additional units in order to, basically still maintain their qualifications and keep their jobs, really. So people that would teach in TAFE or RTOs, registered training organisations, were required to have a TAA and then a TAE. This is very summarised. Or you could have a teaching degree, which is higher again, but not many people teaching in tech in TAFE actually do that. Anyway, I will have a look through the comments now, and I've answered the question. Is Peter an Australian lawyer? Yes, he is. Is it right for people to say that he's not? No, it's not. It's defamatory and it's false, and people should know better, and hopefully you can spread the word around, and then they can know better, and then they can't have an excuse saying, oh well, I thought a lawyer meant that you had to have your own law firm or be working for someone else, bro, or whatever. So just looking through the comments. Yeah, so Hillary says, I keep reading people calling him out and I have no idea why. So one of the reasons perhaps might be that Peter calls out the AVN, and basically, I don't necessarily agree with him doing some things, how he does it, but he's entitled to do what he wants to do. And he's made videos saying to Meryl Dorey, who used to be the boss of the AVN, and now apparently Anita Hafmeister's the actual boss, but Meryl Dorey's still heavily involved, obviously. But asking, where's the money, Meryl? Because the AVN raised back in, when was that? When did No Jab, No Pay come out? Was it 2016? Something like that. But they raised something like $150,000 or $180,000 specifically for a High Court challenge against No Jab No Pay, and that court challenge never occurred. I too was involved in raising some money for that, and encouraging people to donate to the cause. And it is reasonable to ask, where's the money? And some people associated with it try to answer that question with plausible deniability that what they're saying may be a mistake, because apparently the people don't answer themselves. And some people claim that $70,000 was spent on a barrister's advice, and he said you got no chance, and then money was offered to be refunded, something like that. Is that accurate? Who knows? Is it not? Who knows? But some people point out, I think Peter as well, perhaps, that if the AVN has been around for 30 years, what accomplishments do they have? And that's a thing that people also say about Peter too, that, what accomplishments has he had? But, even a Google search can bring up about his green chip investments, and I think there are 2 other companies he had with green chip in it. And obviously, he worked for ASIC before it was called ASIC, as an example. But, Einstein supposedly had a saying, which maybe he stole, like he allegedly stole the theory of general relativity. Some people say from his wife, other people say it was when he was working in a Swiss patent office from some Siberian or something like that dude, and just put his name on someone else's patent. So the story goes, who knows what's accurate or not. But, he is credited with saying insanity is trying the same thing again and again and expecting different results. And really it should be added, as long as circumstances remain the same. So Cherie says, Peter is as genuine as you get. And Lorraine says, I like Peter. And just to be clear, I did not tell Peter I was even going to do this video. I'm sure he probably would have run me up and told me not to do it, like he tells me not to engage with his trolls. But, it is what it is. So Cherie believes that IMOP and the AVN have been infiltrated by some dark people over the years, but the truth always prevails. Sometimes the truth doesn't prevail, and that is just what Cherie reasonably believes as well. So Barbara says he's very genuine. Mark says, cut to the chase, bro, no pun intended. Oh, that's pretty funny, because Peter talks about someone called Chase for some reason, without getting into it. Cherie says, depends on which area of law. Solicitors can do enough of a good job on most occasions, well, in Victoria at least. Yeah, so that's no criticism to solicitors either. Sorry, I'm just trying to tell someone to be quiet for a second. Just wait 3 minutes, okay? Shush. Anyway, so again, it's no criticism of solicitors. It's even like within, being a solicitor, some people focus on torts, i.e. suing people for civil wrongs. Some people focus on, criminal law, as an example. So one interesting thing about Lucky Lance was that I did say on his page, because he's been particularly criticising Peter quite a lot, and I believe so in a defamatory manner, I should say. And I've seen posts where he says, hey, look, I'm unemployed. So presumably, how can I put it? So without getting into defamation law too much, basically it is a shield or protection if someone is poor, so that they don't get sued for defamation. Because is someone going to spend $50,000 to sue someone who, they're poor and they're on Centrelink, and, you win a judgment against them and you get $20 a fortnight or a week or whatever it is, minimum payment for the next 2,000 years. Not many people are prepared to do that. But besides that, there is also criminal defamation, which takes care of those things, where in Queensland, for instance, people can be jailed for 3 years maximum per offence. In Victoria, as I posted to Lucky Lance, because he said defamation is civil, not criminal, something like that. And then I posted some Victorian law with their criminal defamation. It's 5 years maximum, but it can be 10 years maximum, in certain circumstances. So I do think it's a bit silly to go around criminally defaming people, and it's not nice anyway. Of course, people should be honest, and whatever. So Hillary says, I follow him and he seems a lovely, genuine person to me, but keep reading mean things being said about him for some reason. Then Lorraine said, some people will just hate. Like I said, I think a lot of it is perhaps tall poppy syndrome, and also, if he called out allegedly the AVN, then, a lot of AVN/IMOP people do attack people associated with them. And as I said, contact me and tell me I can't be friends with them, and that, for instance, with a former friend, they said that that person has a Peter problem, i.e. that, things won't go that person's way and they won't be accepted into the movement while they're still being friends with Peter. And apparently that has worked, and also, I'll be quiet about some other stuff concerning that. So Barbara says, Peter has a few trolls that enjoy rubbishing him. Yeah, and it's like, don't people that do that have jobs or have something important to do in life, instead of spending 10 years online just making dozens of fake accounts and just to defame someone, to destroy someone? And also, as I pointed out on Lucky Lance's thing, because Peter openly says about mental illness, that if Peter's mentally ill, then what, are you trying to drive him to suicide? And that's a genuine, reasonable, foreseeable thing that could happen. Hopefully it doesn't, of course. But, what kind of inhumane and inhuman thing is that? Sure, someone can try and, work out if he is a scammer or not.